very good morning to you. It's Friday, the 12th of May. I'm James Max. This is Talk, here live from London, and we continue with early breakfast. Going to be turning our attention to the papers very shortly. Going to be joined by Eric Wiltsher, broadcaster based in Slovakia. We'll be finding out not only about the front pages, but the stories within, including the fines that you could pick up for just riding a bike. We'll be speaking about the story relating to the actor Stephen Tompkinson, finding out why Alistair Campbell has sparked a new Brexit row, and discovering about the UK's most miserable city. Oh, I wonder which one that is. I guess we'll find out. Meanwhile, the Bank of England has raised interest rates for the 12th time. The predictions, to be honest, haven't been great when it comes to inflation or economic growth or indeed unemployment. And inflation isn't going down. So what would you say to the Governor of the Bank of England if you had the chance? Now, if you want to have your say, we'll take some more of your calls in this next half hour. Also, we turn our attention to the papers, joined this morning by Eric Wiltsher, broadcaster based in Slovakia. Radio Tatras International is where he broadcasts. Meanwhile, Eric, good morning to you.
Good morning, James. How are we today?
Yeah, very well indeed, thank you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. Let's turn our attention to the front pages first. Food prices on the way down. Supermarkets' promised peak has passed. Given that you're elsewhere in Slovakia, what are food prices like there? Have they gone up exponentially, or have you been relatively...
I mean, I have a reputation for being slightly careful with my money. I don't know where I get it from, Jones, but for some reason I have
your
it.
money, illicit purposes? I don't know. Maybe you got one of those Maybe you got one of those OnlyFans accounts that we didn't know about.
Yeah, I'm cautious with spending money. I don't know. Anyway, when it gets to the point of me looking at a cucumber and saying I am not putting that in my shopping basket, that gives you a clue as to how the food prices here tripled in just over 2 weeks.
So when people in this country, we hear a lot of nonsense, and we'll come on to some Brexit chat, and they blame Brexit and they blame all sorts of things. I assume it's got nothing to do with it. I mean, if we've got higher food inflation in Germany than we do here in the UK, there's something else going on.
You're absolutely right. And when you look at, I mean, one of the lower cost areas in this part of the world is Poland. It's renowned for having lower costs on food. Even there, the food prices have gone high. I mean, I'm about 25 minutes from Poland. But it's not just...
So when you want to do your weekly shop, is it worth you crossing the border?
Yes, absolutely. Gosh. Absolutely. And the other fun thing for any of your more senior viewers and listeners is there is a market there which is like the old East Lane Market of London. It is the most wonderful place to go to.
I too like a market. I love it when you get street traders. I love it when you have fruit and vegetable stalls. I love it when you have like children's stuff. Oh, yes. Love all that.
It's like going and having a sarsaparilla all over again as a little boy.
Sorry, having
funnily enough, sarsaparilla drink.
What the hell's that?
Non-alcoholic drink. It's a fruit juice drink. You don't know sarsaparilla? Gosh. I'm shocked.
I haven't even heard of it before. It sounds like you should be on Antiques Road Trip.
Well, probably, yes. I am that old. It's a fruitish type drink that looked like beer. And when you were a little kid, you could pretend you were drinking beer, but it was actually non-alcoholic.
When was this? I mean, I was born in the 1970s, so maybe I missed out on this lovely device.
Yes, I'm a little bit older than you, James.
Oh.
In fact, I'm very proud of being a medical miracle in that next month I'm 69 years old.
That is old.
I know. And if you looked at an X-ray of my body, as one nurse did one day, and she went, "Oh gosh, you've broken nearly every bone in your body." I went, "Yeah, and I'll do it again."
Okay.
Because I used to love my motorbike racing. But anyway, enough of that.
Enough of that. Oh dear, oh dear.
What, don't you like motorbikes?
Apparently, can you? According to producer Dave, you can still buy sarsaparilla.
Yes.
by
Yes,
the
you
litre.
can, James.
I don't know why you would bother.
James,
It sounds revolting.
James, you must try it. I'm going to test you on this. The next time I'm here, I'm going to test you. See if you've tried it.
Sounds revolting.
And it's not very... and by the way, I still have a motorbike.
Okay. Well, that's either brave or stupid. Now, talking of stupid, the front page of the Daily Express. How can we trust the Bank of England when its predictions on recession, unemployment and inflation have so far been wrong? Meanwhile, The Sun decided that it's going to talk about Phil because yesterday they said that the relationship between Philip Schofield and Holly, as in Holly Willoughby, was strained. Meanwhile, ITV Star's statement on Rift, Philip Schofield has made an extraordinary last-ditch attempt to save his This Morning partnership with Holly Willoughby. Do you think they're trying to shove him out, or do you not care?
I think he's past his sell-by date.
Wow.
To be very honest.
Okay.
He's had a great career. I think he should go out now while he's still on a high. And it's got to the point where it's me, Philip Schofield. And when you get to that in broadcasting, it's time to say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I could think of a few colleagues who might go on that little judgment. Meanwhile, talking of the I newspaper, new inflation warning as Hunt admits key pledge may be broken. This is Tory MPs urging Sunak and Hunt to cut tax to ease the cost of living.
I was listening to you before we came together, and the one thing you missed, James, the Bank of England, the system is called get out of jail for whichever party has the Chancellor in power. Jeremy Hunt is moaning about the Bank of England and inflation and interest rates. Hold on, isn't the Chancellor supposed to be in charge?
Yeah, but the Chancellor,
money in the country?
Yes, but after Gordon Brown gave the control of interest rates, in the 80s, interest rates were used as a political tool in order to sort of start and stop the economy. And then Gordon Brown decided to give the Bank of England a remit to say, your job is to get inflation to 2%, do whatever means, and you control interest rates. So it's no longer a political tool.
No, I get that, but the trouble is, you've got... It's like having... dare I say, two producers on one show.
I'd be delighted to have one.
Would you? Really? Gosh. And the one you've got as well. You can't have a Chancellor of an Exchequer not controlling interest rates.
Well,
and the only reason Gordon
Brown...
can...
But then, on the other hand, that's the same system as in the US, that you have the Fed chief, and they set interest rates, and it's not a governmental matter. Because the problem is that if you have a government in charge of interest rates, they haven't got a Scooby-Doo. So I think it'd be worse.
No, I agree with that as well, James. The problem is it's easy the way Gordon Brown set it up to pass the buck. Okay. It's not my fault. It's the Bank of England's fault.
Yeah, well, there is that. Meanwhile, Gotcha, says the front page of the Daily Star, the big black cat that you spotted as you walked back from the pub could have been a panther. After all, say DNA boffins. Meanwhile, the Daily Telegraph. Alison Pearson has been writing, and she says, why Justin Welby, he's the Archbishop of Canterbury, should be ashamed of himself. She's got a point.
Yes, he should be. It's a very, very good point. However, he is entitled under the structure of the UK to sit in the Lords and make the point, whether you agree with it.
Yeah, but the point is whether or not he should. And I think it undermines the whole position of the House of Lords to have people who are unelected and frankly, duplicitous in their views. That if he's going to say that a policy that the government, which has been elected, whether you like them or not, it has been elected, and say that and pass judgment and describe a law as immoral, when we have an institution that has been misogynistic, an institution that has been sexist, an institution that has in the past been homophobic, an institution that has refused to deal with all of its issues, to then say that a government policy that is trying to control migration, where we also see on the Daily Telegraph front page that net migration could reach 1 million here in the UK over the course of the year.
Can I just
and to say that it's immoral is a nonsense.
Correct. Now, if you want to come to Slovakia as an immigrant, you have 90 days to make up your mind, or you become an illegal alien. It's as simple as that. And this is part of the reason why I brought up the Brexit story again, because there was so much misinformation.
Well, we will come to that story very shortly. Meanwhile, we must rattle our way through some more headlines. On the front page is The Guardian. UK sends long-range missiles to Ukraine for the first for the West. Meanwhile, on the front page of The Mirror, interest rate pain is not over yet, and they're quoting the Bank of England head. Andrew Bailey. Don't say convicts, it upsets criminals, says the Daily Mail. Prison officers have been ordered to stop calling criminals convicts in case it offends them.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. The Financial Times, Bank of England lifts rates and warns inflation target will not be reached until 2025. So there you go. Those are the front pages. Meanwhile, Eric, we're just going to go to a couple of calls. Andrew's in West London. Andrew, what would you say to the Governor of the Bank of England if you had a chance?
Well, I believe that he had no choice but to lower to higher the interest rates because of the food prices. It's the government's fault for letting it get out of control.
If food prices have gone up because all the costs of feeding animals, of fuel that's required to, mow the fields and heat the greenhouses and all that sort of thing. If that's gone up because there's been a price shock in the market, can you explain to me, Andrew, how interest rates are going to do anything to dampen that inflation?
That's just all a cop-out in the war in Ukraine. It's just someone to blame, It's basically they're profiteering on people, Ukrainians dying, basically.
Well, it may be, but if fuel prices have risen and it costs more to make the stuff, you've got to charge more for it. And no matter what you do with interest rates, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, well, the supermarkets, they could offer more deals and make it easier for
they could, and there's pressure on them, Andrew, but you can't get away from the basic fact. And the basic fact is that if the costs to make something have gone up, and those costs have gone up because there is a price shock and it's not due to excess demand, interest rates rising makes no difference.
Well, I think it's true what you said earlier about the food prices either freezing or going lower. Then, and I do think the interest rates will go down next time.
Well, let's hope they do, Andrew. Thank you for that. Let's go to John, who's in Shropshire. John, morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking the call.
Well, thanks for calling. What would you say to the Governor of the Bank of England if you had the chance?
Well, I'd want to reset the parameters. Your last conversation, or sorry, the one before with the chap from Slovakia, covered part of what I was talking about.
Yeah, well, Eric's still here, so he can join in on that one. So, yeah, John...
I find the question of independence now as a failed subject, particularly as the last two governors in particular, Carney and this one, Bailey, have sort of actively worked against the government. I've got in mind most recently Liz Truss's thing. Although she made mistakes or whatever, I mean, the governor did go out of his way to say, we're not supporting the government and we're setting a deadline and cutting off the funds.
But there was actually something slightly more nefarious, which is the announcements that he made in the run-up to that budget that caused markets to be spooked, which a lot of people don't report and they don't talk about. They just say that the trust budget and the trust administration was badly handled. They didn't do the things that they should have done in order to manage the news flow. They made some terrible mistakes. That having been said, there's no doubt that the Bank of England did their very best to undermine her and her position, because they took the view that you should reduce economic activity by raising interest rates, and she said you deal with this problem by growing the economy.
Exactly. Well, whichever is right, and I bow to, better brains than mine, but wouldn't the whole situation, that and other examples, be far better managed if they work together?
It would be, and maybe we're dealing with another legacy of the great, wonderful Chancellor Gordon Brown, who had, in my view, quite a hand in the financial crash that we ended up with, but seemed to avoid all blame and seemed to sort of collect a lot of plaudits for the way he picked up and cleared up the mess that arguably he contributed to creating in the first place, whilst blaming banks and bankers.
Well, do you know what? You've surprised me now, because given your comments with Eric, I thought you'd have taken the opposite view, because it turns out we agree.
Well, then there we go. You see, John, I would argue, John, that I'm the voice of common sense and/or, I'll just go with that. I'm the voice of common sense, John.
Well, yeah, the only thing I would say slightly, James, is that you sit on both sides of the fence with that, I think. No,
not at all. In what way am I sitting on both sides of the fence, John?
Well, earlier you shall we say, lauding the merits of the independence, and now you couldn't have a government.
Well, I didn't laud the independence. I just said that there's a problem when you have government just moving the levers in order to. I mean, what they did in the 1980s when it came to very high interest rates to protect the currency. I think it was a little bit of a fallacy that to have a strong currency was a great thing, particularly when you're trying to export. Because sometimes you can overprice yourself.
I agree entirely.
So there we go, we're in entire agreement, John. It's all excitement there. John, in Shropshire, thank you. Eric, we come back to your stories in just a moment here on Talk. 6:21 is the time, going through the papers with Eric Wiltsher. He's a broadcaster based in Slovakia. Eric, let's talk a little bit about the mum of 7 who can't get a job. Why not?
I fail to see why she doesn't understand why having a whole... I mean, what does she do? Collect tattoos? Her whole face is covered in tattoos. She's tried for a job as a cleaner. She couldn't even get that because they said she wasn't suitable for the job. Well, let's face it, if you're going to be a cleaner, let's just say that you're coming into somebody's home, you have small children there, you're the cleaner, and they look at this person with a whole... I mean, why the face is covered in tattoos, I don't know. But her whole face is covered in tattoos.
Do you think our attitude? Do you think our attitude to tattoos has changed? I mean, I have to say, I'm
yes.
not the biggest. I'm not the biggest fan of such things. People seem to like them. If they like them, so be it. I try to make sure that I don't make discriminatory choices based on whether somebody's got tattoos or not. But I do.
I would agree with you, James.
I do remember a time though when. If you worked in a financial institution or a professional service or otherwise, it was just an absolute no. If you've got a tattoo, you're not being employed.
I mean, I work with a guy who's got tattoos on his body, but not on his face, not on his hands.
I don't.
And I think that's acceptable.
Okay, all right. Well, I have to say I would not go for a tattoo. I don't think. Meanwhile, there's a story in the papers today about Stephen Tompkinson, the actor, just saying, "I just want to go home," as he was cleared of the accusations. I mean, this story is, I don't know, it's just an extraordinary story overall, isn't it?
Well, it is to me. And when you look at the guy who was absolutely drunk off his face. Walking around in his underpants, who now says he's got trauma and it's hurt his head, poor boy, who walked out of the pub absolutely bladdered and then thinks that he can shout his mouth off, do anything he wants in anybody else's space. He has got to be a screw loose. Society has got to stop this ridiculous notion that it's everybody else's fault, barring your own. Take some responsibility. Go and have a drink, by all means, but be responsible.
No, I think that's the case. Meanwhile, to Alistair Campbell, who's launched a right old Brexit row.
And I don't mind. If you want to have another debate, have one. But this time, please, can we have the correct information? And I share one story. There is no such thing as freedom of movement of people within the EU. It is complete hogwash. If a German person with an EU passport today comes to Slovakia and says, I want to work, live and work here, they go, OK, you have to apply for an ID card. Apply for an ID card. You have 90 days. If you don't get one or you don't apply, after 90 days, you're an illegal alien and deported back to Germany. Where is the free movement of people?
Well, I suppose the freedom of movement of people is that if you work for a company and if you want to go across and work in any jurisdiction within the EU, you can do so.
You can to a point, but only 90 days here. That's the law. So you can't.
If you're an EU citizen, and say for example it's a French company, they open up a Slovakian office, surely they can put their French workers in Slovakia if they wish to.
No, they have to get Slovak ID.
Really?
Yes.
But will you have it turned down?
I'm not. If you have a bad record, you could.
Oh, interesting.
I must admit, with mine, they were very kind, and it was 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Have you tried getting a passport here in the UK?
Yes, similar. Yes, believe me.
What a mess! How can we have a situation that you cannot go to a passport office and get a passport immediately if you need one in an emergency? And how do we have a system that has months and months of a wait?
Yes, and furthermore, I forgot my passport photos, and the nice policeman says, "Don't worry about it, Mr. Wiltsher, I'll take them for you now."
Well, then, there you go. If only we had that kind of service here. Meanwhile, let's talk about the UK's most miserable city. Which is it and why?
Well, it used to be, if you remember, Luton, once upon a day, was that... That's an interesting movement. What was that? The camera never lies, does it?
No, the camera never lies because Jeremy Kyle just walked in. Nobody moved the shot away.
Did they not?
I wasn't going to
straight in front.
Yeah, you walked straight in front of the camera.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know. Somebody was having a little doze behind there.
Hopeless. What's going? No, they're actually looking after me because I can't do anything. How are you?
Oh, okay. I'm fine, thank you.
Why have you got a pair of rubber gloves on your
Hang on a second. So, Eric, what's the most miserable city?
Bradford.
Oh, well,
what is the most miserable city?
The most miserable city in the UK is Bradford. That's according.
Where does he live?
Well, he's in Slovakia.
I think Bradford's a very nice place.
Really? Yeah. Okay. All right. Jeremy Kyle disagrees. There we go. Eric, thank you so much for joining us this morning. If people want to find out more about you and what you do, where do they go?
If they go to www.rti.fm, they'll see some more horrible pictures of me.
Excellent. Eric, thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk Much.
Sorry, so he's from Slovakia and he's slagging off Bradford?
No, it's an article in the papers. There's a Daily Star that's been read about it.
That is exactly why I shouldn't have commented. The what?
The Daily Star. It's
precisely.
It's not even a newspaper. Anyway, you asked about the marigolds.
Rubber gloves and an Easter egg.
It's not an Easter egg. This is the dice of doom. This is how we pick it. This is how we do our newspaper review. So you can pick a number, and I use these marigolds in order to handle either the Daily Mirror or the Guardian.
Fantastic.
Do you like that?
I do when I know the boss is in the building. That's fantastic. Yes, so what an interesting... I've got wires coming out of every orifice. Cost of living. Inflation, as you know. The Bank of England, 4.5%, 12th consecutive rise, highest it's been for 15 years. And really difficult for people. And they get a bit fed up. I'm sure you're the same. We sit and we hear analysts talk about this. I want to know what it means for real people. We'll have financial experts on stage. Got a great lineup, by the way. We'll do America, Ukraine, the Royals, domestic politics. We'll even do bloody Eurovision if we have to. Got Wes Streeting, Shadow Health Secretary. Got Lord Ed Vaizey, who didn't make it to the cabinet, is still bitter. We've got Tobias Elwood. We've got Hugh Merriman from the government round. We've got Amy Tarkanian, ex-Republican senator, on the show from America about Donald Trump. We could have the next president of the United States could be a man convicted of a sex crime in a civil court. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, and how Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, is still in a job is also unbelievable.
I don't disagree with you at all. They should have done it sooner, in my humble opinion.
Well, quite, but I don't know, for some reason some people seem to think he's some sage, wise old owl.
I think you'd make a great Governor of the Bank of England.
Are you trying to say that I don't make a great early breakfast presenter? That's a whole other story.
6:29? Of course you do. What are you
Of course we do. Wow. There we go. Jeremy Kyle is next with breakfast. Funnily enough, it's the weekend, so I'll be back on Monday. Have a fabulous weekend and enjoy brekkie. That's next.